This is the Stop Time Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Hopkins, and I'm here to engage you in thought-provoking, motivational conversations around practicing the art of living in the moment. I'm a certified life coach, and I'm excited to dig deep and offer insights into embracing who we are and where we are at. Today, I'm regrouping with Bobby Conte Thornton again because we were caught in a blackout, or at least I was, because I'm in the mountains, he's in the mountains, we're cross country. So for those of you that don't know Bobby, he made his Broadway debut originating the role of Calogero in A Bronx Tale, directed by Robert De Niro and Jerry Zaks. And most recently, he returned to Broadway this spring singing as PJ in Marianne Elliott's gender-bent revival of Company. He made his feature film debut in If Beale Street Could Talk and has appeared on television in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Madam Secretary, and The Code. His debut studio album, Along the Way, is available across all digital musical providers. The links will be in the show notes, so please check those out. And Bobby's a native of San Francisco, California, is currently, quote unquote, residing in Manhattan, although he is quarantining in Big Sky, Montana. Bobby, thanks for joining me again for take two.
Thank you, Lisa. It's amazing. So ridiculous.
I know. You know, not that I want you to relive it or anything, but I know that my listeners will be very curious to know if you remember that day. You know, it's something we'll talk about for forever, isn't it? You know, the day when you heard that Broadway was shutting down. What was going on for you then?
Yes. We were in previews. We had just finished our 9th, and we had little meetings a couple days before, sort of warning us about the onsets of COVID. Our company manager had come and said to all of us and all of the crew days before that, America is good, but there are certain countries around the world that are shutting down. So when you have vacations later on in the summer, if you end up going to these various countries, you would not be allowed back in the building for a number of weeks, and you would be without pay for those number of weeks. Then I think the day before there was an usher at Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which was at the booth a couple theaters away from us, had contracted it. And so that show had shut down, and there was a worry if things were going to be transferred around Broadway, but Company, we still were told, was going to go ahead. But then we woke up Thursday morning to that article saying everything, Broadway was going to shut down permanently. At least we thought at the time, for a month. Got a phone call and a big conference call with our producers and company managers and everything saying, this is the game plan we have for now. They said, does anyone have any questions before we all leave? And Chris Sieber said, yeah, what am I supposed to do without seeing you guys every day now? And that's when it all sort of sunk in very sadly. So we didn't get to see each other in person that day. We were all home, and they just said, don't come into rehearsal before our preview tonight, and we'll let you know further details when we have them.
No kidding. Wow. So were you able to see any of the cast members before you went into quarantine? Like, was there a gap in there at all for you?
The day before we had done our show, and I said goodbye to my dressing roommate Terrence and said see you tomorrow, and said see you tomorrow to anyone I saw in the building. It was just like any other normal show or any other normal night.
Yeah.
No. It was so invigorating because we were I guess a week away or so from opening, and we were just about to basically freeze the show. We had sort of really become solid in what we were doing and the story we were trying to tell as a uniformed company. Sad.
Yeah. Did you go right into quarantine yourself, or?
I was in my apartment in New York City, and then basically within a week, myself and my sister made the joint decision to go out to Montana.
I see.
So we got out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And but I packed 2 weeks of clothes thinking we'd be back in April, and now here we are in September, and I've been re-wearing the same 2 weeks of clothes. I bought I think 2 new pairs of pants since I've been out here, and maybe a shirt. But I've been revolving the same outfits for a long while now.
Does it make you realize that you don't need as much as you think you need? I mean,
true, or just shows how much of a slob I am. But clearly, I have no care in my appearance really at the current moment.
No, well, there's a real freedom in knowing that you actually can't see anybody, right? You got to take advantage of that. It's like, well, okay,
right. And when we're doing Zooms, all that matters from the chest up. Who knows what I'm wearing underneath?
That's so funny. What would you say is the greatest challenge you've faced so far?
I think actors are very good with structure when we're sort of placed within it with doing, if you're lucky enough to be doing a show 8 times a week for long periods of time, your life is sort of dictated for you. Many times your life is curated by sort of seeing what else is out there and looking for the next opportunities to sustain yourself financially and creatively. So when that's sort of no longer the case, um, building a sense of structure for yourself, I found, has been the constant ebb and flow, and that's mostly rooted in relationships and making sure that you're staying in contact with people that you trust and that you love. But it's hard, especially as a person whose love languages are quality of time and touch, to constantly be looking at people through a computer screen doesn't seem real. And when that's been sustained for over 6 months, you just start to go a little insane, and you don't feel like any connection is really meaningful and valid, at least in comparison to what it would be in the quote unquote real world. But I've gotten better and better at dictating structure for myself the more time we've gone on, redefining what sort of the priorities of day-to-day life are. Especially, I think we're all figuring that out, when you have to let a bit of the conventional world go, and how to quote unquote function in a 21st century modern society. That's sort of gone away a bit, but yeah, it's I'm definitely in a bit of a peak right now, and we'll see if there's another low coming up around the bend. But I'll try to sustain the peak as long as I can.
Connection, obviously, sounds like it's a very important value of yours. When you can't have that physical in-person connection, whether it be a pat on the back or a hug or looking in someone's eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to support yourself in that? How are you able to manage?
Well, luckily I'm quarantining with family, so I'm able to spend time with them in ways that I haven't for years. I have two younger sisters, so it's amazing to spend quality in-person time in ways that I haven't since we were all in high school together, before I was still living in our parents' house. So they definitely garner me a great deal of energy.
Yeah.
But it's, again, finding means finding a way to stay passionate about whatever I do on a daily basis. In the beginning, it was very easy because I was working on an album that I had already been planning on releasing in April. And we ended up doing it in May because we ended up having to engineer and master it and mix it over email, which was sort of I can't believe we actually did it. It was a logistical nightmare. But that took up a great deal of my time for the first couple months of quarantine. And sort of when that settled, it was going, okay, great. What's the next thing to focus on? What's the next thing to put your energy towards? And that's what a bit of the aimlessness came in, because the first thought is going, well, it perhaps isn't surviving enough. Isn't it enough to just get through the day without losing your mind? And especially being out in Montana, we're very lucky that we get to be outside on the daily in a safe way. So hiking has become a priority. When we were here, there was still snow on the ground, so we were cross country skiing a bunch and snowshoeing, and that's been a very healing process, to be sort of in the middle of nowhere and having to just stare out into the abyss and feel very content.
Yeah.
But it's, as someone who doesn't have that life normally ever, especially if I ever would have that time, it would maybe be for a week or weeks at a time, not months at a time. It's just been a recalibration. But you find different ways. I still find ways to be creative. I still find ways to service the inner child greatly, but it's not rooted in the pragmatism of finding the next job and being able to pay the bills of playing pretend. It's finding a way to get back to the core of why I even want to do it in the first place, while also finding means to so stay afloat financially in these times that are
Yeah.
where there's so little in our control.
Did I hear you say service the inner child?
So I guess an aspect of psychodynamic therapy,
Hmm.
of like, you have an inner child who's supposed to represent this 5-year-old version of yourself, who's wide-eyed and endlessly curious, and is sort of unabashed in wanting to experience life to the fullest, and doesn't understand what it means to function in a conventional Americanized socialized society.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm absolutely familiar with the term, which is why I picked up on it, because I love that you acknowledged that this was allowing you more time for that. And I'm curious to know what that looks like for you when you're allowing your inner child to lead a little bit.
Um, when I allow the inner child to lead, I'm a real dork. I'm a nerd, especially when it comes to our industry. There's not a group of people I'd rather wanting to be servicing myself around. And so it would be continuously nerding out. It's going on sort of weird tangents of conversations with people. When it comes to relationships and when it comes to functioning in the real world, that's a whole totally different matter.
Yep.
It's led me to having some very unconventional relationships in my life, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
Yeah.
It's led me to the most profound version of connection, to use your word, that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And then in a way, sort of that's what my album is charting. My album is based off a show that I had been writing for a number of years. And slowly, as I was getting therapized for the first time in my life, I was realizing, oh, this is the journey of that inner child trying to find a sense of self and love and compassion and safety in a world that doesn't really offer that more times than not.
Hmm.
And what ends up happening more times than not is when you leave the inner child is an incredibly vulnerable aspect of yourself, because it doesn't know to be anything else but open-hearted. And more times than not, that open-heartedness is going to be taken advantage of, and that person's going to find profound hurt and profound sadness and profound betrayal. But to be able to still, in spite of that, leave yourself open-hearted, because that's the only way that's going to leave yourself serviceable to finding anything of value and worth in life.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful though. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So you talked a little bit about how you've been able to reconnect with family and reconnect with yourself a little bit. Is there anything else, any other discoveries that have surprised you that you might take with you, when things go back to quote unquote normal?
I mean, it's something I had sort of known in vague terms, and it was always something you could repeat to yourself, but nothing really sits in and lands with you until it's put into tangible practice, and then it's reiterated to you further. And for me, it's continuously learning about what clarity of communication means. But it's just learning, having a sense of healthy self-esteem and awareness. So obviously, when you're alone and when you're just surrounded by family for a long period of time, and not surrounded by the distractions of New York City and sort of endless people around you, that's always sort of brought more and more into focus for me personally.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you're 28, right? Are you 28?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you've had an amazing career so far, right? You have, more road ahead of you than you have behind you. And yet, I know in our industry, it's always that sort of the chase, right? The next job, that worry after everything's gone, that, well, can I do it again? Often when we do something really, really well and it ends, you go, shit, I can't believe I did that. I don't know if I could do it again. Right?
Right.
Does that
Yeah.
come up for you at all? That sort of
You broke up.
imposter syndrome to a certain extent, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Of course. I mean, if an actor hasn't come face to face with imposter syndrome, it's sort of it's just a matter of when. Um, of course, there was a great actor I worked with, sort of right out of school, who sort of said that on a break. He said every time he does a gig, he feels like he has to relearn how to do this thing in the first place,
Yep.
which is on a base level sort of exciting. It's continuous discovery, and it's rooted in the people that you're doing it with. Your experience of playing pretend is going to be highly affected by the people that you're acting with and being directed by and being serviced by in a technical visual sense. That's sort of the brilliance of collaboration, is that it can always be new. But yes, there is a fear that it's always easier to be lower on the totem pole, staring up, going, I really want to be there, and bitching and moaning about all the things that aren't getting you there. And then when you are and you have your hand there, to be content with that feeling and not going, oh, I shouldn't be here, or this is a mistake, and or it felt safer to be below staring up at it and complaining than to be here and actually having to step up to the plate and see what you're made
Yeah.
of. So yes, I think I've gotten better and better at that with time. Luckily, I was in an incredible situation at a very young time in my life where I had to face that head on, and sort of hopefully came out the other end of it a little more wise and literate and less ignorant. So hopefully I can bring that into my future experiences. But
Yeah.
I'm sure, it's a continuous fight with the inner voices.
I'm always interested in energy and relationships and connection. And I think about you as what were you, 24 when you did Bronx Tale?
Yes.
Talk to me about how in the moment were you able to be at 24 and having this opportunity?
I think my ability to even get the job required me to be quite self-aware. And in the moment, I'm a big advocate of acknowledging the the undeniable luck that is involved with anything surrounding in this business, especially because so little is in our control. However, you need to meet that luck and opportunity head on with an unapologetic work ethic. So I think I worked really hard and persevered through a number of things in order to get that job, because initially I auditioned for it out of town and went through months and months of an audition process and didn't get it, and then had the luck of the role being reopened when it came to Broadway, and still leaving myself serviceable in terms of my preparation, but just also of my energy and mindset to be able to put that past experience aside and come into it afresh, and also for the creatives to come to it afresh and say, let's look at this kid again and see what 6 months of time has done for him, has done for us. Whilst being in it, it was the greatest learning experience I could have asked for, because I was in a room of these giants, many of whom were my creative heroes. Alan Menken, I'm sure this is a very unoriginal thing to say, but I think anyone of my generation can speak to this, is that he wrote our childhood songbook. Alan was a reason why I became interested in the musical theater in the first place.
Wow.
So to be singing new material that he had written, somewhat curated for my voice, especially near the end as we were working on new material, is sort of a mind-boggling thought to let in. For Chaz to bring me into his family and to regale me with anecdote after anecdote of stories that are not in the show, to help inform really the kind of person he was and who I'm trying to step in and play every night, was extraordinary. To have this sort of meta experience of being in a show about two father figures and this kid trying to take the best aspects of both of them to lead a fuller life, and being directed by two people who I'm sure they would speak to, that they see the world very, very differently, and they see this art form very, very differently. And me as an actor trying to take the best of both of them and service however I can in this show, was sort of just, with perspective, is an amazing, endless experience to learn how to maneuver around egos, to learn and garner a strong sense of self, to know when to pick your battles, to know when to be a good soldier and put your head down and do the work, knowing how to hopefully eloquently and succinctly make your case and state your piece when conflict does arise, how to collaborate in a genuine way, how to really be able to, it was just, and this was the hardest thing, to just not be in continuous awe of these people,
Mm-hmm.
but still being able to lock them in the eye and be able to meet them as colleagues.
Yep.
And I think that was a great lesson to learn, for all the positives and the negatives that come with that.
Oh yeah.
And so I think, yes, I'm able to experience some of those things now with some time and some distance, more positively, but it shows a credit to them as professionals, that whenever something has come up in my life where I've reached out and very humbly asked for their help in something, a response is immediate and is incredibly affectionate and generous on their part. So to be able to feel like I have these amazing artists and human beings in my corner, and many aspects of life, is, I feel, the real positive takeaway that I have from that experience.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And but kudos to you that having not gotten it, um, but then get the call back. What was the time frame in between when they called you again? You said 6 months or so?
Yeah, maybe it's a little less, but yeah,
Yeah.
around that amount of time, a
But
number of months.
the fact that you were ready says a hell of a lot about you. I mean, so I just wanted to celebrate you for a moment. I mean, these people have done a lot of work, so they must have known that about you instinctively.
Yeah, well, I think, but that also just speaks to the story itself.
Mm.
I definitely saw a lot of myself in that character, in that community of people. I'm from a Napolitano Italian family who, my grandmother is born in the Bronx, and in many ways I was impersonating not only Chaz but my grandfather in that role. So I had a real tangible sense of who this guy was. It clearly was staying with me, whether I had the job or not.
I'm curious to know if you had inside of you an intuition and or a determination that it would come back to you. This would one day be yours.
Well, perhaps, but I didn't really give it much thought, because
Yeah.
that's so, again, outside of my control. What I was doing, on the advice of my roommate at the time, is that I was just sort of keeping it in my practical lexicon, so that, because I was incredibly heartbroken when it didn't go my
Yeah.
way, and I wasn't able to really process it quickly enough to be able to go on to, when you again have amazing people working for you and going, well, you didn't get this job, but here's a new thing that you're going to go in for this week. And I wasn't able to separate myself and give over to new material quite fully. So my roommate at the time saying, why don't you re-engage with the Bronx Tale material instead of sitting in complacency and frustration and anger about it? You know what they want. You clearly see a path of something that you need to find within yourself, within this material. So why don't you just engage with it without any preconceived notion or expectation that it in a tangible way would come back into my life, but that I had something more of myself to find in this material in order to process and move on with the rest of my career. So the fact that it luckily even came circumvented and came back, I was able to say, well, the role hasn't left me in any real way. If anything, I feel that if I feel much more secure of it in my body and in my mindset and energy, that then I can be malleable to whatever tonal direction they need to place me into.
That's amazing. What a great roommate. Talk about a great
Yeah,
advice.
please.
Holy, yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. What a great story. What, if anything, do you think stands between you and who you want to be?
Ego, this
Mm.
continuous balance of the two, what we've been talking about.
Hmm.
Like, more times than not, when you can get out of your own way and make other people far more important than yourself. I think that's the only way to service yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. But with this world, and certainly under this pandemic, but in general with this world and the things that we can't control, how much energy would you say you spend worrying about stuff?
I mean, especially now, it's far more than I should be, and that's the constant battle with this, is
Mm-hmm.
to get out of your own anxious mind. When you're faced with unrelenting solitude, you see what you're made of. And what's great about being in the theater is you're constantly surrounded by other people. You're in a continuous practice of being part of a team. That's what I, in many ways, sort of rely on,
Yeah.
even if it's outside of the theater, just being around with friends. So when you're not serviced that, yes, those anxious thoughts come into your brain.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know, like, as an actor, how do you think this experience will inform your process, or, be part of your toolbox as you go back?
You mean, as grateful as I was to be playing Pretend for a Living before, man, I'm going to be infinitely more grateful just
Mm.
to be able to step on a stage and be in close proximity to people again.
Yeah.
It's going to be boundless
Yeah.
gratitude, which is only just going to lead to just endless more curiosity. I'm just excited to be because it'll be arguably a year before we're able to
Yeah.
be back in a room
Yep.
together, and to see how a year of life has changed all of us. It's going to affect everything. It's hard because in the beginning of this pandemic, I thought, okay, great, we're going to have to, no matter how long this takes, we're going to have to get back to whatever this momentum was that we all were feeling as a cast, because we were all in sync with what the story we were telling was. And to now go back and just try to revert back to what we were doing will probably seem very inauthentic. So for better or for worse, we're going to have to take in whatever this time has given us and let it inform the work. And that inherently will make it different, but hopefully that much more truthful. So I'm excited, if nothing else, to just be in a rehearsal room again with these amazing, intelligent, funny, ferocious people, failing over and over again and throwing out ideas and going, well, that didn't work. Well, let's see what, but that idea leads to this idea, which leads to this idea, which leads to this idea. And that's the only way we can curate something that's honest and truthful. So to have time for that again is what I really, really can't wait.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be so friggin'
But that also speaks to the art of doing commercial theater and it's something I definitely learned doing a year in Bronx Tale was finding spontaneity and structure, which is the hardest thing to do. Where
Yep.
you have a game plan, you have a map of what you have to do. You have to be standing in this spot, or else a tower is going to come and topple you to the ground, or even worse, if you don't get out of the way, you're going to hurt your fellow cast member and they're going to be hurt. If you, quote unquote, in the moment are feeling something different, you're going to ruin a structure that's been put in place for you.
Yeah.
However, within that structure, you still need to live in this reality where you are saying these words for the first time and are responding authentically to a person who is saying their words for the first time. It's just the process of deepening it further and continuing to be curious and keeping your ears open and being open to what someone's giving you on a given day, while still hitting your mark and doing and giving the show that has been proven to work over and over again.
Yeah. Amazing. So where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Or do you even think that way? I'm guessing you don't even think that way, but.
Well, I think my goal from the get-go, since I graduated college, was I want to run the marathon. I want to be paid to play pretend for as long as I want to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's going to be when I'm 40, whether that's going to be when I'm 80, whether that's going to be, we're going to come out of this pandemic and go, maybe I don't want to do this anymore, except I can't imagine really any other life that brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
So however I can service myself to be in a room with incredibly intelligent and creative people is what I want to be doing. Yes, as a nerd, I have bucket list roles and bucket list shows and people that I want to work with.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to probably have that in my life is just to say, I want a longevity of a career versus like hitting certain, because the trickiness, if you can say that about my utterly privileged life, is that I've had multiple childhood dreams come true at a very, very young age. To make my Broadway debut with those mammoths and heroes of people was one dream, especially, having my first Broadway show be Beauty and the Beast and singing original Alan Menken music every night, to even though my favorite movies of his are now probably Raging Bull and Cape Fear and Godfather Part 2. Of course, the first thing I ever saw him in as a child was like Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers. So the fact that I worked with him at a young age, and that I got to introduce him to my Italian grandparents, who have been in awe of him since they were young people as well, that was a real dream come true. And then now to be in Company is the show I saw as a 14-year-old that made me really want to do this in the first place. It was a real turning point for me as a young person in my training, because it was the first Sondheim show I ever saw. The universal themes of feeling profoundly lonely, of curating different aspects of yourself in order to conform to different groups of people, like in the way that I am a different person with you talking to you on this podcast than I am with my 6 best friends from college, than I am out with strangers walking around, than I am to myself when I'm in total solitude. Hopefully there's a continuous thread between all of them, but there are certain characters you play that have very distinguished personalities and vocabularies and physicalities depending on who they're with, and that is Bobby and company to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And so that the fact I get to be a part of that in any way is profoundly lucky. So for me to place markers and ideas, okay, next I want to do this show or this show, it's hard to think that way because in a way I've already done the shows that I've sort of wanted to do. So I need to think I need to think bigger dreams. I need to expand my thinking about even what's possible, which is a strange thing to talk about. And so the way I try to tangibly affect is just saying, okay, well, I just want to run the long game and sort of see what comes in. And hopefully it's going to be resonating with where I am as Bobby in my everyday life.
And it's about, as you said, the long game. I mean, I know you mean that also literally, and that you want to, stay in it as long as it's bringing you joy, and as long as it's, there's growth, connection. These are all the things, that I'm hearing, and that's not. Mm-hmm. That doesn't have to do with what show it is. Rather, just leaving yourself open and curious, and in the game, and energetically, ready to receive. And it will come. And
yes, which is a very different way of thinking than I was thinking at 22 when I was graduating from college.
Oh,
so it's just it's a bit of a reconfiguration.
Yep. No, of course. And I encourage you to continue on that, on that journey. You can't lose. We can't lose if the objective is to learn something from everything, which you will if you're open to doing that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can't lose. So what do you want to do?
Yeah. No,
I have a buddy who says you can, and it's now in 2020, you can be screwed over in any job. Nothing is safe in a way that we always thought it was, especially growing up generations before. So if that's the case, why not go after what makes you happy?
Absolutely.
I think that's a great way to put it.
How do you want to be remembered? What's important? How will people remember you? What will make you smile down from heaven?
Oh God. Hopefully I'd like to be remembered as a generous individual, someone who valued loyalty and fidelity of friendship, and a generosity of spirit and play, whether it was on stage or off. Again, you take the work very seriously, but you don't take yourself very seriously. Mm-hmm. So that you can leave yourself open to spontaneity and connection and love and sadness and every aspect of what it means to be alive. It's also been quite a life-changing thing this time to process and see the outpouring of love that's come Nick Cordero's way, especially at this time, and see how he's been remembered and how people have been reflecting on him. And I think if any of us could be seen in the way that Nick Cordero is seen now, I think that would be a life very well lived.
Yeah.
100%. So it's he's always and he's been an example ever since I've known him. So that's always a great marker to sort of chase.
Oh yeah. And to my listeners, if you have not already seen the tribute for Nick, my God, the tribute video was so beautiful. And Bobby, you were on that, and it was so moving. And
what I loved are the amount of times, because as it rightly should have been, the tribute featured many of his closest, oldest friends from back in Canada. And the amount of times the phrase, well, there are stories that I can't tell on here, was uttered, it made me so happy, because I got many, many stories as well that I cannot share on this podcast. That I will hold in my heart and in my recall, in my brain for as long as I can, and because they're defining memories and experiences and qualities that I got to share with him.
Yeah.
Almost everyone he met, whether you were his closest childhood friend or whether you were someone that he saw at the stage door for literally a minute of his time, it's amazing how he made everyone feel seen instantaneously, and that would be an amazing quality for any of us to have and to be remembered for. To answer your question, if at my deathbed people said I always felt seen by Bobby, and that if we were talking and we were locking eyes, we could make each other feel that we were the only two people talking. I think that's a very special quality that Nick has that I would like to reflect in my life.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Real quick, just before we finish, I'm going to say what makes you, and I'm going to say a word, and then you can just, whatever comes into your head. So,
okay.
You ready? Okay. What makes you sad?
Isolation.
Mad.
Complacency and idiocy.
Frustrated.
Lack of clear communication.
Interested.
Curiosity.
Motivated.
Passion.
Inspired.
Risk-taking.
Grateful.
Friendship and fidelity of friendship.
What are the top 3 things that happened so far today?
We have 2 Jack Russells that are like our family dogs that I've grown up with that are here with us in Montana. And one of the dogs, they're 2 Jack Russells. They're very small, endlessly annoying and frustrating dogs to deal with. And one of them, when I take her off the leash, will not follow me. She's much more connected to my sister. My sister is the alpha with these 2 puppies. And today she followed me. We were hiking up a mountain, and usually when I let her off the leash, she literally will turn around and run towards the house again. And today she followed me up the mountain. So I took it as a success that
That's awesome.
I had some power over this dog.
Yeah.
I took an amazing nap today. And I guess I'll say this then. This is the one of my 3 things that I've done so far today.
Well, what are you most looking forward to today?
My sister and I, there's a farmers market that takes place here in Big Sky that we go to very safely every week. So that we'll go and do today. And so we'll get to eat good food and go hang out and bring our books and be outside and shoot the shit and be very at peace with my sisters today, which would be very lovely.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you doing this again. I know we had, it was great. It was wonderful getting to know you previously before the blackout. So I actually take that as a gift and a little bit of luck in my favor.
Yeah, it was telling us something. It was saying you need a redo. No, I'm very appreciative and grateful as well, Lisa.
Yeah. Thanks for spending the time and being in the moment with me. And, I wish you nothing but joy and connection. And, I just, I feel for our community, and I know that, when we come back, we're going to come back stronger than ever. And I'm grateful to know, that there's people like you in it. So thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Here. I really appreciate it, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've been speaking today with Bobby Conte Thornton. Be sure to check out his link. Stay healthy, everyone.
Yes.
Woohoo! In music, stop time is that beautiful moment where the band is suspended in rhythmic unison, supporting the soloist to express their individuality. In the moment, I encourage you to take that time and create your own rhythm. Until next time, I'm Lisa Hopkins. Thanks for listening.